Saftu is critically looking at the upcoming national and provincial elections. To say things are falling apart is an understatement. We are on a march towards a failed state. Although thankfully we have not yet arrived. But it is also not true that the apartheid colonialism is better than a democratic South Africa. Workers overwhelmingly supported the demand for one person, one vote in a unitary state and all that it represents for social progress and for the advancement of our civil, political, labor, and human rights. The gains registered by workers in all fronts are not insignificant either. Strides have been registered in some areas of development, such as improved access to education, to health care, to electricity, water, roads, and so forth. Some of these strides are, however, being reversed by high prices and inadequate subsidization, privatization, corruption, and neglect. So what are the main reasons for our failing state? We argue is bias against the working class. The history of slavery, colonialism, apartheid, and capitalism informs us about the deep roots of the current crisis. Government has not taken significant steps to overhaul the colonial economy. Since even before 1994 and presently since 1996, we have suffered from neoliberal economic policies and a fiscal and monetary policy framework that serves big business far more than it serves the working class. The result has been deindustrialization and loss of more secure, better paying jobs in the manufacturing sector, which have been replaced by precarious jobs that have no job security and benefits. To make things worse, government imposed austerity programs after the 2008 and 9 world capitalist crisis, whilst cutting the corporate tax rates from 52.5% in 1992 to the current 27%. The state is failing to sustain public health system and to ensure schools halt learner dropouts, often exceeding 50% by grade 11, and to make higher education available free to the working class, as was promised to the fees must fall activists in 2017. Treasury refuses to expand the economy through a genuine stimulus package, ignoring the demands for the basic income grant set at an upper bound poverty line to create more employment through demand-led economic growth. Government has refused to introduce a solidarity tax or wealth tax as part of a redistribution strategy in what is the world's most unequal country. Black people remain the face of landlessness and propertylessness. The country remains two in one, a beautiful place for mainly white people, retaining all their inheritance from the apartheid colonialism, and the other largely black retaining all the socio-economic suffering from colonial, apartheid, and capitalist oppressions. What are the features of this failed state we are talking about? Along the ongoing community protests, the July 2021 looting, arson, and social chaos demonstrated our society's extreme desperation, with police overwhelmed to the point that they could not contain the riots, and the army also stretched thin, given simultaneous deployment in northern Mozambique on behalf of the French and US oil giants, the Total Energies, and the ExxonMobil. And now the same troops moved to the DRC on behalf of the mining capital, which is still using child labor. Law and order and the justice system as a whole are grinding to a halt. In this society, most women no longer report cases of rape. They are wounded inside and are suffering. And there is only 11% chance of conviction for rape perpetrators. And no one reports petty crime anymore in a country, according to the last police statistics, that picks up 84 bodies on average every single day. As for white-collar crime and corruption, the PricewaterhouseCoopers ranked South Africa as the world's worst case throughout the 2010s and the second worst today. The Santin Tsotis are so extreme and the Treasury and the Reserve Bank so slack at administrating exchange controls that in 2023, the global financial system grey-listed South Africa and its banks. And tenderpreneurs, hyenas, continue sabotaging infrastructure so that new tenders for repair are issued for them to feed, while the average outsourced contract is overcharged by at least 35%, according to the Treasury's leading procurement official. The culture of Batupili has, in too many areas of government services, become merely a tokenistic rhetoric. So is the culture of learning and teaching. Most of our towns and cities have now joined our townships, informal settlements and rural areas as being filthy and uninhabitable. We are losing our youth to the rising tide of hopelessness. There is a drug epidemic and pandemic as more youth, especially dropouts and the unemployed, find nyaope and escape from boredom. The rise of gang wars in our working class areas in part reflects the phenomenon of kids growing up without the love of and support of their fathers. As Statistics South Africa reports that 71% of the so-called African children are neglected. Although during COVID-19, we showed a degree of mutual aid, in general, capitalist individualism has pushed society away from the solidarity, selflessness, internationalism, and Ubuntu that during the liberation struggle defeated one of the world's most criminal racist regimes. Capitalism is also trashing our natural environment, causing extreme droughts with day zero water shortages and storms such as the rain bombs that killed 500 people in Durban in April-May 2022. When it comes to the triple crisis facing society, government is only making matters worse. Unemployment, using the narrow defined rate of joblessness, was as low as 16% in 1995, not including those that have given up looking for work, for which we can add then another 10%. But it has now ratcheted up to 32% in the most recent statistics survey. But the narrow definition unemployment has increased from 5 million people in 2013 to 8.2 million in 2024. In the third quarter of 2023, the number of young people between the ages of 15 and 34 who were not in any kind of employment, education, and training stood at 8.7 million. Inequality, we have become the most unequal society on earth. 10% of the population owns 90% of the wealth. Oxfam International reported in 2020 that it will take less than 23 hours for an average CEO to take home what an average worker earns during the whole year. Poverty. 2/3 of our people live on less than what should be considered the poverty line of 65 rand a day, or a mere 1,950 rands a month. The GDP per capita has declined in US dollar terms over the last decade from 8,700 in 2011 to 6,500 in 2023. Faced with this crisis, how should the working class vote in 2024? The election debates mainly ignored the issues we are raising as the working class. Vast numbers of our people have long given up on our political parties and are not participating. We do suggest that everyone vote on the 29th of May rather than skip the election. Workers should ask candidates what they stand for. Faced with this crisis, Saftu has adopted the following principles to help guide workers on who to vote and who not to vote for. 1. Don't vote for parties not concerned about the root cause of the crisis, which is the history of colonialism, apartheid, and capitalist system. Don't vote for parties who will entrench neoliberalism that makes the rich richer and the poor poorer. 2. Don't vote for parties which scapegoat the crisis of capitalism and neoliberalism on other workers from other provinces or ethnicities or even outside the borders of South Africa. Reject tribalism. Reject regionalism. 3. Don't vote for parties which blame the crisis of unemployment, poverty, inequalities, and corruption on the very same victims of capitalism and neoliberalism. Don't vote for parties which threaten to weaken the protection of workers in the Constitution and labor law. 4. Don't vote for parties which have done nothing to deal with corruption in both public and private sector. Look carefully at the leadership lifestyles and predict how their politicians will handle state resources when in power. Don't vote for those displaying opulence and unexplained obscene wealth whilst giving empty rhetoric about equality. 5, don't vote for parties which discriminate against women, people with disabilities, or people with a different sexual orientation. Reject misogyny. Reject chauvinism. Number 6 and last, vote for equality. Vote for parties advocating socialism, which means building a society based on equality of all classes, races, genders, sexual orientation, cultures, and religion. Saftu as an independent but not a political trade union federation is not going to prescribe to workers which party to vote for or not to vote for. Having issued these principles, we are leaving it to your own conscience to decide what you believe is in the best interest of the working class and our country. We thank you.